waiting for it to work. Yay, we're live. Okay.
Yay! Ooh. I tried some bullshit hippie ointment on my shoulder today, and that's the first time I've done that gesture in a year without it snapping at the back and hurting me. Yay,
Well,
hippie ointment.
well played, bullshit hippie ointment.
Yes. I was at Sprouts. I was like, I'll try something, and this was like all of the joint health meds were $35, and then there was this little pot of ointment that was like $9, and I went, that's a gamble I'll do. All right.
That is $9 worth of maybe.
Right, and it's feeling good, and I'll have to let you all know how it continues, and which bullshit pot of hippie ointment is amazingly effective.
Inquiring minds, they want to know.
Indeed. And I was worried I was going to need surgery because it was this rotator cuff type pain all the way around whenever I did anything abrupt with my arm. Even like I went to swat a fly the other day, and this movement had it going.
I am familiar with that sensation.
Yeah.
Did it feel like kind of like having a toothache, but inside your joint?
Mine's a little more like like on the, it's not in the joint, it's around the joint. It's around the edges of it, but not in the skin or the muscles. But yeah, how do you even describe?
I don't know, dude. I still remember the day I was like 25 and my right shoulder was bad, but my left one hadn't blown out yet. But I was just talking to some other like 20 something, and I was like, yeah, you know how you can tell the difference between joint pain and muscle pain? And she was like, no. And I was like, right.
Damn it.
Right. That's not normal. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Or she wasn't paying attention, because I think it felt like muscle pain, but it felt too close to the joint to be muscle pain.
Well, I think
the ointment is helping makes me think that it must have been muscle pain, but I threw out my shoulder carrying a heavy bag a year ago last June.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been the same.
Indeed.
And it's so frustrating.
But I mean, I think she didn't know the difference because it's not normal for 25-year-olds to need to identify that.
She probably knows now.
Yeah, I hope for her sake she does not. I will say that for me, joint pain and muscle pain are very different. So if it felt like muscle pain, but just in a weird spot, it might have been a muscle that you just were not sure where it was.
Yeah, it's not so much, it wasn't toothache-y. It's more Charlie horsey. Or it's sprained ankle-y.
Mm-hmm.
Ankle sprainy. Yeah.
Sure. Anyways, I'm glad it's not happening right now at this moment.
Right? I got to raise my arms, and all was well with the world.
Huzzah.
Ropes indeed. I sang of leaves. We've talked about Galadriel singing the Doom song.
Indeed we did, yes. Galadriel sang the Doom song. I think we were at the end of that chapter.
Okay. After they'd eaten and drunk, they went and sat down again, and it's like, God damn it, woman, let us go.
Right? It's like talking to someone's grandma on the phone, and you're like, okay, bye. Okay, I have to go. And they're like, anyway.
Did they finally leave, or were they about to?
I'm not sure. How does that chapter end?
Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river fretting among the tree roots and drifting and driftwood near the shore.
Okay, we weren't quite there. Hang on 1 second. Let me get my book.
Galadriel had sung one song, but not the second one that's all in Elvish.
True.
Did we stop at Frodo took the phial, and for a moment as it shone between them, he saw her again standing like a queen?
We might have. Let me look at it.
Your sharks are awesome.
Thank you. We're so close to the end here. Let me see. Yes, he bowed but found no words to say. That's where we were.
Excellent. Now the lady arose, and Celeborn led them back to the Hythe. A yellow noon lay on the green land of the Tongue, and the water glittered with silver. All at last was made ready. The company took their places in the boats, as before. Crying farewell, the elves of Lorien with long grey poles thrust them out into the flowing stream, and the rippling waters bore them slowly away. The travellers sat still without moving or speaking. On the green bank near to the very point of the Tongue, the Lady Galadriel stood, alone and silent. As they passed her, they turned, and their eyes watched her slowly floating away from them. For so it seemed to them. Lorien was slipping backward like a bright ship masted with enchanted trees sailing on to forgotten shores, while they sat helpless upon the margin of the grey and leafless world. Even as they gazed, the Silverlode passed out into the currents of the great river, and their boats turned and began to speed southward. Soon the white form of the lady was small and distant. She shone like a window of glass upon a far hill in the westering sun, or as a remote lake seen from a mountain, a crystal fallen in the lap of the land. Then it seemed to Frodo that she lifted her arms in a final farewell, and far but piercing clear on the following wind came the sound of her voice, singing. But now she sang in the ancient tongue of the elves beyond the sea, and he did not understand the words. Fair was the music, but it did not comfort him. Yet as is the way of elvish words, they remained graven in his memory, and long afterwards he interpreted them as well as he could. The language was that of elven song, and spoke of things little known on Middle-earth. Ailoriel antarla sisurinen, Yeniunu time veramanandaran else, etc., etc. Namarie na hiruvalye na valimar, na elye hiruva namarie. Ah, like gold fall the leaves in the wind, long years numberless as the wings of trees. The years have passed like swift draughts of the sweet mead in lofty halls beyond the west, beneath the blue vaults of Varda, wherein the stars now tremble in the song of her voice, holy and queenly. Who now shall refill the cup for me? For now the kindler, Varda, the queen of the stars, from Mount Everwhite has lifted her hands like clouds, and all paths are drowned deep in shadow, etc., etc. Farewell, maybe thou shalt find Valimar. Maybe even thou shalt find it. Farewell. Varda is the name of that lady whom the elves in these lands of exile name Elbereth. I like reading a fantasy world where there's not really a religion, there's just a knowledge of the gods. Like they're a fact. I was trying to read a book that was a fantasy world, but there was a religious strife, and I was like,
What book was that?
It was the Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
Elysium? No, something like that.
Whatever
Yeah,
series that is.
There's strife, and there's like a religious war, and I'm like, meh. These things interest me not, except
Indeed.
maybe small gods. But small gods is a comment on it, not a recreation of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are things with religious themes that can be done well, and I just don't necessarily think that Brandon Sanderson is the guy.
um, yeah, but it's nice to be in a world where there isn't any question of the gods existing, or the limits of their powers, or the stories that have been told about them. Like, it's just like fact. People are still around who've met them.
It's like at work when I tell stories about people who used to work there, like, oh yeah, Albereth, I knew her.
Right?
Yeah, she loved
Yeah,
cake.
exactly. Who taught you to bake? Oh, Yavanna. She's really into growing things and then harvesting them and then teaching people how to grow and harvest things. I mean, she invented trees, so she's got a stake in it.
I really want to tell stories about my friends like that. Like, well, she invented trees, so
Right? Name dropping. As Manway used to say to me.
That one time when my best friend Manway was in a fight with my other best friend. Oh shit, Melkor. But
Or
have you watched The Good Place?
oh, I watched the first couple episodes.
That's right. We talked about that, and you didn't like the characters.
I still haven't watched the rest. I'd like to.
I think it is worth it. I think you would enjoy it, but you do have to get past the first part of being like, "Wow, you're all terrible." There's
And it's also like I only have so many hours in the day,
yeah.
and
No, I
my TV watching time is usually with Jason, and if he doesn't want to, I'm not going to press the issue.
That's very understandable. Yeah, there's my TV watching time is extremely specific, so I get you there. But there is one character who name drops a lot, and that's how she does it. It's like, I remember that time Kanye, my friend Kanye was talking to my friend Taylor about my best friend Beyonce, and what I told him was,
Suddenly the river swept round a bend, and the banks rose upon either side, and the light of Lorien was hidden. To that fair land Frodo never came again. The travellers now turned their faces to the journey. The sun was before them, and their eyes were dazzled, for all were filled with tears. Gimli wept openly. I have looked the last upon that which was fairest, he said to Legolas, his companion. Henceforward I shall call nothing fair unless it be her gift. He put his hand to his breast. Tell me, Legolas, why did I come on this quest? Little did I know where the chief peril lay. Truly Elrond spoke, saying that we could not foresee what we might meet upon our road. Torment in the dark was the danger that I feared, and it did not hold me back. But I would not have come had I known the danger of light and joy. Now I have taken my worst wound in this parting, even if I were to go this night straight to the Dark Lord. Alas for Gimli, son of Gloin. Nay, said Legolas, alas for us all, and for all that walk the world in these after days. All lives matter, Legolas. That's how you're going to treat this.
it's more like when your friend just had a breakup and they're like, I'm so sad, and you're like, well, there's children starving in India, bro.
I've never been that person. That is not the kind of person to be.
I agree. I'm just saying Legolas is that person. Legolas is men have died and worms have eaten them, but not for love, is what Legolas is saying right now.
For such is the way of it, to find and lose, as it seems to those whose boat is on the running stream. But I count you blessed, Gimli, son of Gloin. For your loss you suffer of your own free will, and you might have chosen otherwise. But you have not forsaken your companions, and the least reward that you shall have is that the memory of Lothlorien shall remain ever clear and unstained in your heart, and shall neither fade nor grow stale.
I mean, actually, I'm going to take that back. So what Legolas is saying is like, yeah, bro, I know you liked it there. It's a cool place. And Gimli's like, my heart is broken. I love it so much. And Legolas is just like, I mean, there's other places though. And like it's better to have loved and lost, man.
It's better to have loved and yeah. Yeah.
What's that bit from Men in Black where Will Smith goes, you know, they say it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And Tommy Lee Jones goes, try it.
Yeah. Oh, there was a Futurama episode where Fry is like, why should I even go on living? Because he thinks Leela is dead. And Bender's like, because the pain slowly fades, but the love lasts forever. And then he does something incredibly obnoxious, but he has this wonderful moment of clarity before he's like, himself again.
Sure.
Maybe, said Gimli, and I thank you for your words. True words, doubtless, yet all such comfort is cold. Memory is not what the heart desires. That is only a mirror, be it clear as Keled Zaram. Or so says the heart of Gimli the dwarf. Elves may see things otherwise. Indeed, I have heard that for them memory is more like to the waking world than to a dream. Not so for dwarves. But let us talk no more of it. Look to the boat. She is too low in the water with all this baggage, and the great river is swift. I do not wish to drown my grief in cold water. He took up a paddle and steered towards the western bank, following Aragorn's boat ahead, which had already moved out of the middle stream. So the company went. Bare woods stalked along either bank, and they could not see any glimpse of the lands behind. The breeze died away, and the river flowed without a sound. No voice of bird broke the silence. The sun grew misty as the day grew old, until it gleamed in a pale sky like a high white pearl. Then it faded into the west, and dusk came early, followed by a grey and starless night. Far into the dark, quiet hours they floated on, guiding their boats under the overhanging shadows of the western woods. Great trees passed by like ghosts, thrusting their twisted, thirsty roots through the mist down into the water. It was dreary and cold. Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river fretting among the tree roots and driftwood near the shore, until his head nodded and he fell into an uneasy sleep. Chapter 9, The Great River.
I mean, it's just okay.
It's big. The big river.
Sure.
Frodo was roused by Sam. He found that he was lying, well wrapped, under tall grey-skinned trees in a quiet corner of the woods. They papoosed him?
Look, when you fall asleep first.
They elfed him. Legolas did it. That's why it's called elf.
Makes perfect sense.
Under tall grey-skinned trees in a quiet corner of the woodlands on the west bank of the great river Anduin. He had slept the night away, and the grey of morning was dim among the bare branches. Gimli was busy with a small fire near at hand. They started again before the day was broad. Not that most of the company were eager to hurry southwards. They were content that the decision which they must make at latest when they came to Rauros and the Tindrock Isle still lay some days ahead, and they let the river bear them on at its own pace, having no desire to hasten towards the perils that lay beyond, whichever course they took in the end. Aragorn let them drift, with the stream as they wished, husbanding their strength against the weariness to come. But he insisted that at least they should start early each day and journey on far into the evening, for he felt in his heart that time was pressing, and he feared that the Dark Lord had not been idle while they lingered in Lorien. Nevertheless, they saw no sign of an enemy that day, nor the next. The dull grey hours passed without event. As the third day of their voyage wore on, the lands changed slowly. The trees thinned, and then failed altogether. On the eastern bank to their left, they saw long, formless slopes stretching up and away towards the sky. Brown and withered they looked, as if fire had passed over them, leaving no living blade of green, an unfriendly waste, without even a broken tree or a bold stone to relieve the emptiness. They had come to the brown lands that lay vast and desolate between southern Mirkwood and the hills of the Emmenwale. What pestilence or war or evil deed of the enemy had so blasted all that region, even Aragorn could not tell. Agent Orange.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Upon the west, to their right, the land was treeless also, but it was flat and in many places green with wide plains of grass. On this side the river they passed forests of great reeds, so tall that they shut out all view to the west, as the little boats went rustling by along their fluttering borders. Their dark, withered plumes bent and tossed in the light, cold airs, hissing softly and sadly. Here and there, through openings, Frodo could catch sudden glimpses of rolling meads, and far beyond them hills in the sunset, and away on the edge of sight a dark line where marched the southernmost ranks of the Misty Mountains. There was no sign of living, moving things save birds. Of these there were many, small fowl whistling and piping in the reeds, but they were seldom seen. Once or twice the travellers heard the rush and whine of swan wings, and looking up they saw a great phalanx streaming across the sky, along the sky. "Swans," said Sam, "and mighty big ones too." "Yes," said Aragorn, "and they are black swans." Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
"How wide and empty and mournful all this country looks," said Frodo. "I always imagined that as one journeyed south it got warmer and merrier until winter was left behind forever." "But we have not journeyed far south yet," answered Aragorn. "It is still winter, and we are far from the sea. Here the world is cold until the sudden spring, and we may yet have snow again. Far away, down in the Bay of Belfalas, to which Anduin runs, it is warm and merry, maybe, or would be but for the enemy. But here we are not above 60 leagues, I guess, south of the South Farthing away in your shire, hundreds of long miles yonder. You are looking now southwest across the north plains of the Riddermark, Rohan, the land of the horse lords. Ere long we shall come to the mouth of the Limelight that runs down from Fangorn to join the great river. That is the north boundary of Rohan, and of old all that lay between Limelight and the White Mountains belonged to the Rohirrim. It is a rich and pleasant land, and its grass has no rival. But in these evil days folk do not dwell by the river, or ride often to its shores. Anduin is wide, yet the orcs can shoot their arrows far across the stream. And of late, it is said, they have dared to cross the water and raid the herds and studs of Rohan. Sam looked from bank to bank uneasily. The trees had seemed hostile before, as if they harbored secret eyes and lurking dangers. Now he wished that the trees were still there. He felt that the company was too naked, afloat in little open boats in the midst of shelterless lands and on a river that was the frontier of war. In the next day or two, as they went on, borne steadily southwards, this feeling of insecurity grew on all the company. For a whole day they took to their paddles and hastened forward. Paddles. Excuse me. The banks slid by. Soon the river broadened and grew more shallow. Long stony beaches lay upon the east, and there were gravel shoals in the water, so that careful steering was needed. The brown lands rose into bleak wolds, over which flowed a chill air from the east. On the other side, the meads had become rolling downs of withered grass amidst a land of fen and tussock. Frodo shivered, thinking of the lawns and fountains, the clear sun and gentle rains of Lothlorien. There was little speech and no laughter in any of the boats. Each member of the company was busy with his own thoughts. The heart of Legolas was running under the stars of a summer night in some northern glade amid the beech woods. Gimli was fingering gold in his mind and wondering if it were fit to be wrought into the housing of the lady's gift. Merry and Pippin in the middle boat were ill at ease, for Boromir sat muttering to himself, sometimes biting his nails as if some restlessness or doubt consumed him, sometimes seizing a paddle and driving the boat close behind Aragorn's. Then Pippin, who sat in the bow looking back, caught a queer gleam in his eye as he peered forward, gazing at Frodo. Sam had long ago made up his mind that though boats were maybe not as dangerous as he had been brought up to believe, they were far more uncomfortable than even he had imagined. He was cramped and miserable, having nothing to do but stare at the winterlands crawling by and the grey water on either side of him. Even when the paddles were in use, they did not trust Sam with one. As dusk drew down on the fourth day, he was looking back over the bowed heads of Frodo and Aragorn in the following boats. He was drowsy and longed for camp and the feeling of earth under his toes. Suddenly something caught his sight. At first he stared at it listlessly. Then he sat up and rubbed his eyes. But when he looked again, he could not see it any more.
That seems bad.
One of the things I've always liked, though, about these books, and it's one of the things people dislike about it the most, is if, as we've said, if the company spends 4 days in a boat with nothing happening, so do you. There's no, let's skip to the interesting part. It's like, no, we will have conversations, and the banks will slip by, and you're going to get cramped and miserable and cold and lonely too, because that's how part of it. Damn it. That night they camped on a small eyot close to the western bank. Sam lay rolled in blankets beside Frodo. "I had a funny dream an hour or two before we stopped, Mr. Frodo," he said. "Or maybe it wasn't a dream. Funny it was, anyway." "Well, what was it?" said Frodo, knowing that Sam would not settle down until he had told his tale, whatever it was. "I haven't seen or thought of anything to make me smile since we left Lothlorien. It wasn't funny that way, Mr. Frodo. It was queer. All wrong if it wasn't a dream, and you had best hear it. It was like this. I saw a log with eyes." "The log's all right," said Frodo. "There are many in the river, but leave out the eyes." "That I won't," said Sam. "'Twas the eyes as made me sit up, so to speak. I saw what I took to be a log floating along in the half-light behind Gimli's boat, but I didn't give much heed to it. Then it seemed as if the log was slowly catching us up, and that was peculiar, as you might say, seeing as we were all floating on the stream together. Just then I saw the eyes, 2 pale sort of points, shiny-like, on a hump at the near end of the log. What's more, it wasn't a log, for it had paddle feet, like a swan's almost, only they seemed bigger, and kept dipping in and out of the water. That's when I sat right up and rubbed my eyes, meaning to give a shout if it was still there when I had rubbed the drowse out of my head. For the whatever it was coming along fast now and getting close behind Gimli. But whether those two lamps spotted me moving and staring, or whether I came to my senses, I don't know. When I looked again, it wasn't there. Yet I think I caught a glimpse, with the tail of my eye, as the saying is, of something dark shooting under the shadow of the bank. I couldn't see no more eyes, though. I said to myself, "Dreaming again, Sam Gamgee," I said, and I said no more just then. But I've been thinking since, and now I'm not so sure. What do you make of it, Mr. Frodo? I should make nothing of it but a log in the dusk and sleep in your eyes, Sam, said Frodo, if this was the first time that those eyes had been seen. But it isn't. I saw them away back north before we reached Lorien, and I saw a strange creature with eyes climbing to the flet that night. Haldir saw it too. Do you remember the report of the elves that went after the orc band? Ah, said Sam, I do. And I remember more too. I don't like my thoughts, but thinking of one thing and another, and Mr. Bilbo's stories and all, I fancy I could put a name on the creature at a guess. A nasty name. Gollum, maybe? Yes, that is what I have feared for some time, said Frodo. Ever since the night on the flet. I suppose he was lurking in Moria and picked up our trail then. But I hoped that our stay in Lorien would throw him off the scent again. The miserable creature must have been hiding in the woods by the silver lode, watching us start off. That's about it, said Sam. And we'd better be a bit more watchful ourselves, or we'll feel some nasty fingers round our necks one of these nights, if we ever wake up to feel anything. And that's what I was leading up to. No need to trouble Strider or the others tonight. I'll keep watch. I can sleep tomorrow, being no more than luggage in a boat, as you might say. I might, said Frodo, and I might say luggage with eyes. You shall watch, but only if you promise to wake me halfway towards morning, if nothing happens before then. In the dead hours, Frodo came out of a deep, dark sleep to find Sam shaking him. It's a shame to wake you, whispered Sam, but that's what you said. There's nothing to tell, or not much. I thought I heard some soft plashing and a sniffing noise a while back, but you hear a lot of such queer sounds by a river at night. He lay down, and Frodo sat up, huddled in his blankets, and fought off his sleep. Minutes or hours passed slowly, and nothing happened. Frodo was just yielding to the temptation to lie down again, when a dark shape, hardly visible, floated close to one of the moored boats. A long, whitish hand could be dimly seen as it shot out and grabbed the gunwale. Two pale, lamp-like eyes shone coldly as they peered inside, and then they lifted and gazed at Frodo on the eyot. They were not more than a yard or two away, and Frodo heard the soft hiss of intaken breath. He stood up, drawing Sting from its sheath, and faced the eyes. Immediately their light was shut off. There was another hiss and a splash, and the dark log shape shot away downstream into the night. Aragorn stirred in his sleep, turned over, and sat up. What is it? He whispered, springing up and coming to Frodo. I felt something in my sleep. Why have you drawn your sword? Gollum, answered Frodo. Or at least, so I guess. Ah, said Aragorn. So you know about our little footpad, do you? He padded after us all through Moria, and right down to Nimrodel. Since we took to boats, he has been lying on a log and paddling with hands and feet, and I knew about it the whole time.
And I didn't tell you anything, because Gandalf is my role model.
And I don't want to worry the little people. I'm the king, I can handle it.
I handled it by sleeping.
I have tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. I hoped the river voyage would beat him, but he is too clever a waterman. We shall have to try going faster tomorrow. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, right? I'm like,
Okay. That'll do what?
he'll go
Fall
equally
behind.
fast?
He'll fall behind and give up and go start a farm somewhere. I mean, this is
Right? Like, at what point has Gollum ever in his life given up?
he's a good role model that way.
Or a
Technically,
terrible one.
yeah. He's the one who saves the world, which is not on purpose, certainly, but still. Spoilers. You lie down now, and I will keep watch for what is left of the night. I wish I could lay my hands on the wretch. We might make him useful. But if I cannot, we shall have to try and lose him. He is very dangerous. Quite apart from murder by night on his own account, he may put any enemy that is about on our track. The night passed without Gollum showing so much as a shadow again. After that, the company kept a sharp lookout, but they saw no more of Gollum while the voyage lasted. If he was still following, he was very wary and cunning. At Aragorn's bidding, they paddled now for long spells, and the banks went swiftly by. But they saw little of the country, for they journeyed mostly by night and twilight, resting by day and lying as hidden as the land allowed. In this way the time passed without event until the 7th day. The weather was still grey and overcast, with wind from the east, but as evening drew into night, the sky away westward cleared, and pools of faint light, yellow and pale green, opened under the grey shores of cloud. There the white rind of the new moon could be seen glimmering in the remote lakes. Sam looked at it and puckered his brows. The next day the country on either side began to change rapidly. The banks began to rise and grow stony. Soon they were passing through a hilly, rocky land, and on both shores there were steep slopes buried in deep breaks of thorn and sloe, tangled with brambles and creepers. Behind them stood low, crumbling cliffs and chimneys of grey, weathered stone, dark with ivy, and beyond these again there rose high ridges crowned with wind-writhen firs. They were drawing near to the grey hill country of the Emyn Muil, the southern march of Wilderland. There were many birds about the cliffs and the rock chimneys, and all day high in the air, flocks of birds had been circling, black against the pale sky. As they lay in their camp that day, Aragorn watched the flights doubtfully, wondering if Gollum had been doing some mischief and the news of their voyage was now moving in the wilderness. Later, as the sun was setting and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, he descried a dark spot against the fading light. A great bird, high and far off, now wheeling, now flying on slowly southwards. "What is that, Legolas?" he asked, pointing to the northern sky. "Is it, as I think, an eagle?" "Yes," said Legolas. "It is an eagle, a hunting eagle. I wonder what that forebodes. It is far from the mountains." "We will not start until it is fully dark," said Aragorn.
I
When
think
have,
it's a bit late, but okay.
when have eagles ever been evil?
Not so far in this series.
Right? Like if it's a different kind of bird, I get it, but like it's a really big eagle, like the ones that work for the good guys and have never been anything but helpful.
Right.
Ooh, and have that. The 8th night of their journey came. It was silent and windless. The grey east wind had passed away. The thin crescent of the moon had fallen early into the pale sunset, but the sky was clear above, and though far away in the south there were great ranges of cloud that still shone faintly, in the west stars glinted bright. Come, said Aragorn. We will venture one more journey by night. We are coming to reaches of the river that I do not know well, for I have never journeyed by water in these parts before, not between here and the rapids of Sarn Gabir. But if I am right in my reckoning, those are still many miles ahead.
Are you right in your reckoning, though? Are you?
No. Still, there are dangerous places even before we come there, rocks and stony eyots in the stream. We must keep a sharp watch and not try to paddle swiftly. To Sam, in the leading boat, was given the task of watchman. He lay forward, peering into the gloom. The night grew dark, but the stars above were strangely bright, and there was a glimmer on the face of the river. It was close on midnight, and they had been drifting for some while, hardly using the paddles, when suddenly Sam cried out. Only a few yards ahead, dark shapes loomed up in the stream, and he heard the swirl of racing water. There was a swift current which swung left towards the eastern shore where the channel was clear. As they were swept aside, the travelers could see, now very close, the pale foam of the river lashing against sharp rocks that were thrust out far into the stream like a ridge of teeth. The boats were all huddled together. "Ahoy there, Aragorn!" shouted Boromir as his boat bumped into the leader. "This is madness! We cannot dare the rapids by night, but no boat can live in Sarn Gabir, be it night or day." "Back! Back!" cried Aragorn. "Turn! Turn if you can!" He drove his paddle into the water, trying to hold the boat and bring it round. "I am out of my reckoning," he said to Frodo. "I did not know that we had come so far. Anduin flows faster than I thought. Sarn Gabir must be close at hand already." With great efforts they checked the boats and slowly brought them about. But at first they could make only small headway against the current, and all the time they were carried nearer and nearer to the eastern bank. Now dark and ominous it loomed up in the night. "All together! Paddle!" shouted Boromir. "Paddle, or we shall be driven on the shoals." Even as he spoke, Frodo felt the keel beneath him grate upon stone. At that moment there was a twang of bowstrings. Several arrows whistled over them, and some fell among them. One smote Frodo between the shoulders, and he lurched forward with a cry, letting go his paddle. But the arrow fell back, foiled by his hidden coat of mail. Another passed through Aragorn's hood, and a third stood fast in the gunwale of the second boat close by Merry's hand. Sam thought he could glimpse black figures running to and fro upon the long shingle banks that lay under the eastern shore. They seemed very near. "Eek!" said Legolas, falling into his own tongue. "Orcs!" cried Gimli. "Gollum's doing, I'll be bound," said Sam to Frodo. "And a nice place to choose, too. The river seems set on taking us right into their arms." They all leaned forward, straining at the paddles. Even Sam took a hand. Every moment they expected to feel the bite of black-feathered arrows. Many whined overhead or struck the water nearby, but there were no more hits. It was dark, but not too dark for the night eyes of orcs, and in the star glimmer they must have offered their cunning foes some mark, unless it was that the grey cloaks of Lorien and the grey timber of the elf-wrought boats defeated the malice of the archers of Mordor. Stroke by stroke they labored on. In the darkness it was hard to be sure that they were indeed moving at all. But slowly the swirl of the water grew less, and the shadow of the eastern bank faded back into the night. At last, as far as they could judge, they had reached the middle of the stream again and had driven their boats back some distance above the jutting rocks. Then, half turning, they thrust them with all their strength towards the western shore. Under the shadow of bushes, leaning out over the water, they halted and drew breath. Legolas laid down his paddle and took up the bow that he had brought from Lorien. Then he sprang ashore and climbed a few paces up the bank. Stringing the bow and fitting an arrow, he turned, peering back over the river into the darkness. Across the water there were shrill cries, but nothing could be seen. Frodo looked up at the elf standing tall above him as he gazed into the night, seeking a mark to shoot at. His head was dark, crowned with sharp white stars that glittered in the black pools of the sky beyond. But now, rising and sailing up from the south, the great clouds advanced, sending out dark outriders into the starry fields. A sudden dread fell on the company. Albereth Gilthoniel, sighed Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape, like a cloud, and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south and sped towards the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, not an eagle, blacker than the pits in the night. Fierce voices rose up to greet it from across the water. Frodo felt a sudden chill running through him and clutching at his heart. There was a deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound, in his shoulder. He crouched down as if to hide. Suddenly the great bow of Lorien sang. Shrill went the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him the winged shape swerved. There was a harsh, croaking scream as it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore. The sky was clean again. There was a tumult of many voices far away, cursing and wailing in the darkness, and then silence. Neither shaft nor cry came again from the east that night.
Bum, bum, bum.
And that's a gap.
It's a good stopping place.
Right? Oh, yoy, yoy, yoy.
Oh, yoy, 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 yoy.
Can you imagine how frustrating, though? Like, so you're Sauron. You've bred these pterodactyls, frankly. You had your gene manipulating scientists get their DNA out of amber mosquitoes or whatnot, and so you've got these giant fucking beasts. And you have a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like 9 and then some to spare. And you've just sent out the first one to go out and, harass the allies.
Right, and then some twink from Mirkwood just like blink, shoots it down.
Like, fuck this. This is why I can't have nice things.
It's not because I'm a Dark Lord, it's because of the elves.
Fucking elves. Stupid elves. Stupid bows. Like, go, my beloved little Nazgul, go on your winged thing and strike fear into their hearts. And what?
Again?
What do you mean you need a ride home? I gave you a ride home.
Call ye old Uber.
Morduber.
I'm gonna have something clever to say to that
Uberdor?
on Wednesday.
Uberdor sounds like something you'd poop into in the Middle Ages.
What? Okay. Okay.
Oh, little punch drunk.
Well, I am going to go and have some dinner.
Okay.
And so forth. But
Wednesday at 7?
Wednesday at 7 because I'm not working, so I can do 7.
Excellent. All right.
Lovely.
Because that's a really good time for me. I think it's a good time for me. Oh, no, we were going to move it to 9, and I was cool with that because I was going to take Wednesday off from reading, and everybody's cool with that. Maybe we should stick to 9?
Okay, that's fine too.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's stick to 9. That's where my reminder is on my phone, so.
Cool. Sounds like a plan.
And we'll see the rest of you Wednesday at 9.
Indeed.
How many are there?
Watching right now, none.
Shameful. I know. I love you.
Right. Love you too.
Cuidado.
Yamas.